All right, good evening to you, Gabe D. Armand and Mitchell Forty here to talk about all the hard-hitting issues of the day, like who is going to be Missouri's next defensive coordinator, and how important is it that Mookie Cooper is transferring back, and what the hell happened to Missouri basketball in Starkville, Mississippi last night. So I don't know, Mitch, I'll just kind of leave it up to you. Where of all those very important topics, which are top of mind to everybody in America today, where should we start?
I don't know. I guess, what do you think? Should we start with Walters? That seems like the most important news.
Yeah, Walters is the most recent thing. So let's get this out of the way first. Like, the question we are getting from both sides of it, really, and I get it for people who maybe don't know exactly how everything works. Why is Ryan Walters leaving Missouri for Illinois? So I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I get that, on the surface, it seems like a little bit of a step down, same position at a school that hasn't won as much. I think the short answer is job security. It's pretty clear that, anytime you have a holdover, a guy from an old staff, and you bring in a new coach, if, things don't go great, the holdover is kind of a lot of the times going to be the fall guy. And, Ryan Walters' defense wasn't spectacular at the end of this season. So I think it became fairly apparent to him that, if I'm not maybe taking a big step forward next season, I might be asked to leave. Whereas, he can go sign a, 3 to 5 year deal with Illinois, something like that, and have plenty of time to build up from scratch with the fan base. It's going to be a little bit more patient. So I think I don't think that Eli Drinkwitz. I know people have said like he told Ryan Walters to look around. I don't think that's probably the case. I don't think you do that as a head coach. I think if you are suggesting you don't want your defensive coordinator there anymore, you just fire him. But I also do not think Eli Drinkwitz was probably caught unprepared or necessarily devastated by the move either.
Okay, so apparently we have people saying that you're echoing, which I don't understand because we do this the same way on every single show, and like I don't know. This is what I've got. It's set up the exact same way that it's always set up. So yeah, I don't know.
I went with the tried and true method of unplugging a couple things and plugging them back in, so people let me know if it gets any better.
Yeah, just let us know in the comments. If it sounds better, if it doesn't sound better, maybe Mitch can unplug the microphone and just use computer sound. Who knows? We'll figure it out as we go. That's what we do here, right? We just hope to eventually, by the time the show is over, know what the hell we're doing every Wednesday. So. Yeah, I mean, those are the reasons. Let's do some math here. Let's say Ryan Walters takes a $200,000 pay cut. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to get the same amount of money or maybe even a little bit more. But let's say he's down to $700,000. And 3 years at $700,000 is better than 1 year at $900,000. So, I mean, it is. And so I'm a little surprised it's Illinois. I also want to clear something up. Like, I don't think Eli Drinkwitz went to him and said, go find another job. Because if he was going to do that, he'd fire him. Now, I'm not sure Eli Drinkwitz is necessarily fighting super hard to keep him, or I think he was fine if he got another job, maybe. But I don't think he just expressly went to him and said, hey, move on, but we won't fire you, but just go find another job. Because, well, then what happens if Ryan Walters doesn't find another job and you have the same guy as your defensive coordinator? So, I don't know. Illinois, little bit of an odd fit, but like Brett Bielema's a good coach and a defensive coach. I didn't think it was a terrible hire for Illinois. And hey, if he does well there, a couple years, he might be a head coach somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're not going somewhere where you put yourself in an impossible position where you're playing opposite, like a, Josh Heupel type offense that is holding them, or that is running, a play every 4 seconds or something like that. So, and I think highly of Ryan Walters. I always have it. People have realized that on the message board. Like, I think, he could have done some things better this year, yes. But he's a young guy. He's really, he's nice, he's smart, he's relatable. His players seem to like him. So I think he could do it. He could have done worse. It's a little bit of a lateral to downward move maybe, but it makes sense once you kind of take in the framework of his deal.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right. Well, we're apparently having terrible audio issues with you, Mitch. I'm going to hang up, and I guess I'll call back. I don't know. I'll see if you can either unplug the microphone or say however you want to set it up. I'll try to call back in 30 seconds and see if we can fix this. I'm not sure what's going on, but we'll give it a shot. It's picking up both microphones, and that's why it's echoing, Justin says. So I don't know if that means, do you have your computer and your microphone mic on?
That's possible.
Is that
I'll mess with it
yeah,
here in a second.
I'll hang up. You check your audio settings. Text me when you're ready to come back. I can probably manage to talk for like 45 seconds or 2 minutes or however long it takes. So, all right. So we're gonna bid farewell to Mitchell for just a minute, and what that's gonna do is we're gonna have a big blue S for the Skype right there. So hopefully at some point Mitchell will pop back up in that square. If he doesn't, hey, he doesn't. We'll see how it goes. Let's switch scenes. Nope, same thing. I thought maybe I had something that was gonna get it done, but I don't. So anyway, Mitch will be back, and hopefully we'll be back with better sound for you guys. Talking a little bit about the Ryan Walters deal, and we've got up on our site a hot board, and I want to get to that in a minute, but I do want to put this comment up at the beginning. Greg Shackelford says, thanks for doing the show this evening. Sad day in American history, but hopefully we can find some good news with Mizzou sports. And look, we're here because we talk about the silly stuff. We don't want to address everything that's going on today, really. We don't want to get into it here. But it is important to acknowledge what's happening, and we know it's happening. And I texted Mitch earlier today and said, it seems kind of dumb to do a show and pretend that Missouri's defensive coordinator or Missouri's basketball team or something like that really matters. Like, we get it. But also, hey, you guys, a lot of you guys come here so that you can talk about this stuff and not worry about that stuff for maybe an hour. I was glad I had a defensive coordinator thing to kind of follow today because I didn't spend the day in front of the TV watching all that stuff. So, Greg, appreciate the comment. Not in any way trying to derail this or get into a conversation about everything that's happening. People have their own opinions, and those are fine. We're not going to get into them here, but did want to acknowledge, like, hey, we know other stuff's going on. We know it's far more important than this, but we appreciate you guys being here, and hopefully we're providing some sort of an outlet for you guys amidst all of the other stuff that's going on here in the toy department of what we're doing. So let's see. Now, Aaron Johnson is wanting to know, could Drinkwitz fire him given the financial situation? Yeah, he could have. I mean, look, the pandemic is – I mean, Missouri's raised like $20 million for an indoor football facility in a week. Yes, they could have found $900,000 or whatever it was to have Ryan Walters go away if that's what they wanted to do. So yeah, they could have done that if they wanted to, but I don't think they did. Obviously they didn't fire him. Now again, I think it's possible that Drinkwitz was like, that's cool. If you get another job, it's fine. Because it was a little bit of a marriage of convenience and all that. But he didn't – yes, he could have fired him if that's what he wanted to do. He didn't do it. So let's see. Let's move on. Guessing Stirk didn't want to buy out Walters but don't know his contract situation. And, again, I think that Drinkwitz has the autonomy, certainly, to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And if it costs $900,000 or whatever, they'll find it. I don't think Stirk would have told him what to do. Adam is wanting to know if the new DC can get paid more than Walters. Yeah, it's possible. Maybe a little bit more. Hang on, I'm going to try to assist Mitchell over text message real quick. Okay. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully we'll get him back. Maybe like maybe 100,000. Like maybe they pay a guy $1 million. But I don't think it's going to be significantly more than that. So, all right, we're going to try to bring Mitch back. We're going to find out how it sounds to you guys. And if it still sounds terrible, I don't know. We'll figure something out to do. So, all right, Mitch, so you're back. Our great engineering team has maybe taken care of this. So, yeah, we're still talking about Ryan Walters a little bit. And, real quick, I guess we'll test the audio with, I know you and Sean Williams reached out to some of the recruits. Kind of what was the general reaction that you guys heard?
Yeah, so just everyone type if you can in the comments and let me know if this is any better. If not, I'll just unplug the mic. I changed a couple things in the setting. We'll see if it worked. Basically, reached out to a few kids. Quite a few didn't respond, which is fair. I think, for kids who have already signed their national letters of intent and are more or less, locked into a school, I know that, maybe doesn't do them a lot of good to react. But the ones who did, I thought it was kind of refreshing to hear a few people say, like, yeah, this didn't totally catch us by surprise. Oh, good. It sounds better. That's good. One kid, Isaac Thompson, who is the one person who could change his course because he's not until 2022. He doesn't sign for almost a year. Said, I kind of got the sense that Ryan Walters might have been, on his way out. He wasn't super involved in my recruitment, which, credit to Eli Drinkwitz and staff, that makes sense because, he probably figured one way or another, either he's looking at maybe a head coaching job or something like this would happen. So, there was no, cause for panic, I thought, from recruits saying, oh, now I can't go to Mizzou.
Right. And look, for the most part, I mean, yeah, ideally their position coach is there for 4 years and they spend every day with them and all that. But I think we know enough about college football that's just not realistic. I mean, I would be willing to bet people that signed at Illinois last month do not play 4 years for Ryan Walters. That's the reality of the situation. So let's address, before we go on to some of the other candidates and some of the other people we maybe are looking at, the one internal candidate that we feel pretty confident, and Aaron Johnson brings him up and says, I hope it's not Gibbs. I mean, David Gibbs he will be a candidate. I think he will be considered. I think Drinkwitz will talk to him. But I think he's probably the only guy on the staff that is in the running for that. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. Charlie Harbison has a lot of experience. I'm not sure, has he been a defensive coordinator? Do you know? I don't think he has. I think he's always been a position coach. I might be wrong though. But he has a lot of experience. But I don't know. It's hard because we didn't get to know these position coaches hardly at all. I don't have the feel of if he how he would command a defense because I've literally never met him in person. Yeah. I think he's the only one though. I mean, Brick Haley's been a career defensive line coach, has done a fine job. It doesn't strike me as a coordinator. DJ Smith, not Zach Smith. Yeah, DJ really Smith, young. The linebackers coach is young. Just kind of his second or third coaching job. So I think David Gibbs is probably, if they were to stay internal, would be the leading candidate. But I think like you said, he'll be monitored or looked at. But I think it's somewhat unlikely that they would stay internal.
Yeah, Harbison actually was a defensive coordinator from 2007 to 2017 at Mississippi State, Clemson, Auburn, and Louisiana Lafayette. So he has been.
Wow, I was way off there.
Yeah, he has been. I'm kind of with you on Gibbs. I think he's going to be a candidate. Drinkwitz speaks highly of him, but I mean, that's kind of an extension of Walters, right? He's right. And I understand he might run a different system and be a different voice. Anybody pointing to the South Carolina game is the reason. I mean, if anybody thinks David Gibbs came in and changed the whole defense in a week, I don't think you really know how this works. So I think he's a candidate, but I think this is the rare, to quote one of the better Office moments, this is a win-win-win, right? Because Eli Drinkwitz wins because he gets to get his own guy. He gets to pick the direction he wants his defense to go. Ryan Walters wins because he gets a fresh start and he gets some job security. And Illinois wins because they hired a guy who I think is a pretty solid young coach, and they can go out on social media and say, hey, look, we stole one from Missouri. And while Missouri fans will fight back against that, look, if the situation was reversed, you would 100% do the same thing and say we stole one from Illinois. So that's okay that they're going to do that. I threw together a list, and it's interesting. You were saying, the hard part about not seeing these assistants and not talking to them. So I'm trying to put together a list of defensive coordinators yesterday, and I texted you and said, the hard part is, I've never met most of the people on this staff. The only person on this staff I have talked to in person more than 3 times just took a job at Illinois. So, I don't have relationships with this coaching staff to kind of be like, so what do you think about this guy? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not texting Casey Woods and say, hey, what do you think about this guy on my defensive coordinator list? But the point is, we don't know these guys. So that is 100% a list based on nothing I have been told. That is a list based on me doing a lot of Google searching for different people who are connected to Eli Drinkwitz in different ways and who might be ready for a step up, looking at CFB stats to find out who had good defenses the last couple years. I went into the Sun Belt. I went into the Carolinas. And I think just off that list, and again, I would say the odds are well under 50% that the guy Drinkwitz hires is on our list.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I thought it was a solid list. I mean, you brought up some names that I read, and I was like, oh yeah, I could see that working. Maybe, I could see him being a candidate. Yeah, there's a great chance that the ultimate hire may not be on there, but I liked that UAB coach. I think is Mike Reeves or Dave Reeves, something Reeves. I thought that made a lot of sense. That the Liberty defensive coordinator has a connection with Eli Drinkwitz and was part of a good defense. So don't beat yourself up over it.
Yeah, those two. I like the guy at Coastal Carolina. There's less of a connection with Drinkwitz, but obviously they played against each other. They would know each other. I think Drinkwitz hung 56 on his defense last year, so that might impact kind of what he thinks of his defense. And then there are other names that are out there like Huxtable, and I can't think of his first name, was brought up on our board. He's an analyst at Texas this year. He was the defensive coordinator at NC State when Drinkwitz is there. He's also 64 years old. So that kind of tells me I'm not real sure. And then I've got to actually give Power Mizzou a ton of credit today. We have made it 7 hours with the defensive coordinator hot board on the front page of the site, and I haven't seen anybody suggest Jim Leavitt. So
I have, but only, it took a while. It was just in the last hour or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we've made progress. We've made progress.
Yeah. The one name that was thrown out there that I don't think is likely, but not impossible, and has some sizzle. I don't know how good it would be. Is Charlie Strong?
Yeah.
And now I think I don't know. I think he probably wouldn't take it, but it's also better than he has right now, being kind of an analyst in the the Nick Saban rehab program for troubled coaches. So I don't know. Maybe he was a fine defensive coordinator at Florida, but it's been a while, so we'll see.
Is it better than that though? I mean,
yeah, I'm not sure.
No, it really is, but Well, here's what I was talking to somebody earlier today, and Will Muschamp and Derek Mason are on our list. Look, Missouri is almost certainly not hiring those guys. And it really doesn't have much to do with Missouri. I know people who know those guys, and they've told me in the last few days what those guys' plans are. I think Will Muschamp is going to be an off-field coach somewhere. I think Derek Mason might just take a year off. He also might go back to the NFL. So we were talking, if you're a former head coach, if you're a fired head coach, like Will Muschamp just made $15 million to go away. Derek Mason over the last 6-7 years at Vanderbilt has made $20-some-odd million. So if you lose that job, explain to me the thought process that says, you know what? I'm going to go be a defensive coordinator, and I'm going to go grovel to 17-year-olds for another few years for $1 million a year. Dude, you just made $20 million. You don't have to work. I really,
right.
Look, I like my job. It's better than most people's jobs. If I win the lottery tomorrow, you are the publisher of Power Mizzou. I'm not going to keep doing it. And these football people and athletes, I guess they're just wired differently. I mean, like Drew Brees, I watched him play a game with a punctured lung. Like, what? Why, dude? You've got like $27 trillion in the bank. Just walk away, and they can't do it.
Yeah. At least in Breeze's case, like there is the fact that like, okay, I can't keep doing this forever. Like you can kind of coach forever. I mean, we were just talking about Jim Levitt. He's pretty old. So, yeah, I mean, like, I mentioned this briefly last night, and I'm sure a lot of people weren't watching the basketball pregame show for defensive coordinator talk, but we slipped this in there. I wouldn't hire Will Muschamp right now for this position because, like, yeah, like you said, like, maybe he's he's like, okay, yeah, I guess I'll just do something, to keep me busy. But like, is his heart going to be in it to the extent of like a coach who's like looking to become a, like the UAB coach is probably looking to become a head coach somewhere at the end of this? Like, that's probably his goal. Like, Will Muschamp probably knows that's not a possibility. And like, I'm not suggesting he's a slacker or anything like that, but like, I just think it's human nature. Like, if you just got paid like that and, you're probably the biggest place you can go from here is just another defensive coordinator job to not like, put in the 90 hours a week you need to do and take every single text from a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah. Now I want to know, speaking of fired head coaches who are defensive coordinators, like how much credit do I get for showing the restraint to not put Barry Odom on that list? Not very much, probably.
Probably not, because it would have immediately invalidated the whole list, but it would have been funny.
Is there enough money in circulation in the United States of America for Barry Odom to return and be the defensive coordinator with Jim Sturck still the athletic director at Missouri?
I mean, not there to Mizzou to be able to pay enough to afford the rest of its staff. No, it would have all the money in circulation would have to go to Odom. You would not have another staff.
Like member. I literally don't even think if Barry Odom was the defensive coordinator here next year, I think that when rivals went to pay me next month, they would say, I'm sorry, all the money is gone. Barry Odom has it. Like, you're just going to have to go to him. So it would have been pretty funny, though, if I just, like, at the very bottom of the list would have put, like, others to watch, Barry Odom, Arkansas.
That would have been good. Yeah, that would have been good.
But, yeah, and Justin Ferguson suggests Dave Steckel and Alex Grinch. I mean, maybe Matt Eberflus will pass up the Texans interview to return.
He's on the list. He's in the comments now too.
There you go. Yeah, fantastic. So, hey, real quick before we move on to other subjects, I do want to make sure to shout out 573 Tees. They sponsor this show for us every week. 573tees.com. That's TEES, not just the letter T. 573tees.com. Go there. They've got a ton of stuff. Got a lot of Eli Drinkwitz shirts. They've got some really cool Columbia hoodies. I saw a girl wearing one in the grocery store today. It was not mine because my wife stole that one within 24 hours of it being in the house. So she has that one and wears it pretty frequently. They got a lot of good stuff. They've been very cool to us. They support us online and support us certainly here with this show, and hopefully we'll do so with more shows going on and make sure that they have advertising money that does not go to Barry Odom by going and buying some of their products. So I hope you do that. And so now let's move on. Let's stay with the football stuff. And yesterday in I don't know, I guess some people would consider the Ryan Walters thing good news, but I would say that's more just kind of news. The other news we have to talk about is not so good in the basketball realm. So we'll start with the one piece of undeniably good news, that Mookie Cooper is transferring from Ohio State to Missouri. And, I mean, this is a big deal. I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, like we've talked about, when you watch Missouri play these teams at the top of the league, the Alabamas, Floridas, and Georgias, there's just a gap in talent, a gap in skill and athleticism and size. And, Mookie Cooper, he has that without a doubt. He has, speed and dynamic athleticism and playmaking ability. There's a few question marks, like he hasn't played in a football game in a couple of years. What position does he play? But, when you've got an offensive mind like Eli Drinkwitz, who likes to, talk about being creative and getting playmakers involved, like I don't think not having a position is an issue in his mind. I think it gives Missouri something they really needed, which is just a dose of speed and big playability.
Yeah, the comp here to me is Tyler Beatty, a guy who I thought looked really good in Eli Drinkwitz's offense. And like, honestly, my first instinct was to say like a little more explosive Tyler Beatty, but I think that's pretty disrespectful because Tyler Beatty was very explosive this year, and I've seen him do it in the
Yeah,
SEC.
maybe more of like a deep receiving threat.
Right,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen Mookie Cooper do it at this level yet. And I was hoping to get to this before somebody brought it up, but Greg Shackelford brought it up. Mitch, can you remind me? It's been a couple weeks since the season was going. Was Missouri's punt return game good this year?
It wasn't the best.
Okay.
In fact, it was almost the worst. They muffed 4, including a muff for a touchdown. So I think they were like 118th in the nation in punt return average.
Hey, better
so
than like 9 teams, I think. Then.
Yeah, there was 2 years ago when they were 129th out of 130. So they've improved slightly.
So, but in all seriousness, I think Mookie Cooper and Dominic Lovett, day one, step on campus and compete for that job, even if they don't see the field on offense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they also, like, I'd put him back in the kickoff return, and because Tyler Beatty, I want him on the field for more offensive snaps, first of all, and also, second of all, to be quite honest, I've never really seen it with him in the kickoff return game.
Right.
Like,
I haven't either. But yeah, and I think he's going to be, more or less the featured back next season. So yeah, I think it'd be great if you have guys you trust enough to put back there in the kick and punt return game. I mean, that's a way, like, when you talk about, a team like Missouri trying to compete with teams they're just going to recruit better year in and year out. You look at like where are ways you can kind of make up some points, like quarterback. If you have a dynamic quarterback, you can make things up there. If you have a dynamic returner, like that's an easy way to, like, you get a cheap touchdown every few games. Like that's free points basically, or even someone who can, help a little bit in the field position game. That's big.
Or even not fumbling the ball into your own end zone and having the opponent jump on it.
Or just not, have that completely, spear a game and harpoon a game.
Even, I don't know, catching the punt. I mean, that would be a fun place to start. So Bradley Heath is wanting to know, do we anticipate any more transfers? I would say certainly yes. I think there are now 5 spots left in this class. And that is not including I'm including BJ Harris is already in this class until I hear something that tells me that's not true. So I think there are 5 spots left. I think I don't know if I set the over under on number of transfers remaining at 3.5. Do you go over or under?
I think I go under. I think I would probably take the over on 2.5, but the under at 3.5. It's not impossible they could have 4, but if you my guess is you look at 3 more guys you need who could potentially play right away, and that's a tackle, a defensive back, preferably a safety, and a linebacker. I'd be surprised if you take more than that, because there are going to be, you do probably want a couple more high school guys. I think there wouldn't, decent chance they take a high school offensive lineman as well. So maybe another defensive lineman if Shamar Pearl doesn't make it. So that's my guess, is I'll take the under on 3.5.
I think there could be 4. I think they could use all 5 spots on transfers, because here's why. Like Mookie Cooper, it is like signing a freshman.
That's a good point.
He's a transfer, but he has 5 years to play for, because this year did not count. It wasn't a redshirt year. It was nothing. He theoretically is going to be in college through the 2025 season. Now, Missouri fans should hope he's not, because that means he's really good and he's gone. But I think, and again, every transfer is eligible next year. So you could sign a sophomore transfer, and like there's no sitting out. He can play right away. And if he can't play right away, that's cool. Just redshirt him. It's not a big deal. So I would actually say, I think it's more likely that they use all 5 spots on transfers than that they only use 2. I'm just kind of playing with numbers here, and
you're right, and I realized this at the time, but I didn't think about the fact that Mookie Cooper is basically still a true freshman. So and AJ Domogar, the other transfer they've signed, is a redshirt freshman. 4 years of eligibility left. So that is a good point.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, everybody is I don't know. Everybody's going to be in college till 2027, So
there's going to be no seniors next year, but then in like 2023, each team's going to have 60 seniors.
Right. So Justin Ferguson's asking, with Lovett and Cooper both slot guys, does that move Knox back outside? I mean, maybe, but we're assuming that they're both going to play as true freshmen. I mean, I kind of think they are, and Knox can go outside maybe more easily. Like Cooper, to me, has to be a slot guy, right, at his size.
I assume. I don't know. I've never seen him play, but yes, I would think so. I mean, when Lovett signed, we had multiple people, including Drinkwitz, say he can play inside or out. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing a little bit outside. I also wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy who is just kind of in specific personnel packages. Maybe as a true freshman he may not be in every snap receiver, maybe he is, but I would guess that Cooper is more of a true slot. Knox can kind of play a little of both. Lovett can play a little bit of both.
And let's be honest, like Knox has had some injury issues too. You've got to account for that. Danny Ragland wants to know, he still only has to be 3 years removed from high school to enter the NFL draft, right? So theoretically could have him for only 2 years. Yes, that's true. I mean, think about this, and this is not going to happen, I don't think. But theoretically, Connor Bazelak could enter the NFL draft after his redshirt freshman season in college. I mean, this is so dumb.
I'm gonna all next year. I'm gonna just cringe every time I type redshirt freshman Connor Bazelak.
Right. Well, my favorite.
But it'll be kind of fun because I hope he repeats as SEC freshman of the year. That would be fun.
Right. It would be like, remember, and you might be a little too young for this, but I remember when Ichiro won the Rookie of the Year. Like, people were really mad. They were like, he's not a rookie. Well, Connor Bazelak's not a freshman next year, but.
Right. And he was hardly a freshman this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing about this whole thing is still every day somebody is asking, so like, how does eligibility work? I mean, we literally answer this every day. And that's I'm not saying that to you, Danny. You clearly understand how this works. But there are many, many people out there who do not understand this.
When you say that's your favorite thing about this, you mean that is your absolute least favorite thing.
By favorite, I mean totally not favorite. I mean it in the exact opposite way of favorite. So let me see. Greg Shackelford says that Lovett can play outside, and you were saying that. I think that's definitely true. Adam was asking what position Mookie will play. Hey, Marcus Murphy, that's a good comp too. Like that type of a guy. I think you can put Mookie in the backfield for some plays. I don't know if he's an every down running back, but I think you can use him there. And so let's talk real quick before we move on to the whatever happened last night in Starkville. This I think this continues what Drinkwitz did in St. Louis and in the state of Missouri on signing day. I think just the momentum continues. Now, ultimately, the proof here is going to be in 2 years. And I was on the radio in St. Louis this morning and said, look, Ohio State is not going to suffer the next time they come to St. Louis to try to recruit a kid because Mookie Cooper didn't play there. Now, I've seen this cycle with Missouri coaches before. If a lot of these kids don't play at Missouri, in 2 years, people are going to hold that against Missouri. The homeschool, and it's probably that way for Texas and LSU and Louisiana. I don't know. I don't cover any of those places. But the homeschool is held to a little bit of a different standard. And so, look, not every one of these guys has to be an all-SEC player, but some of them are going to have to play well because, I've seen this cycle before. And for the love to continue the way it is for Eli Drinkwitz now, these guys have to come here and do well. It's how it works.
Yeah, 100%. I really don't have much to add. You're right. I mean, I wrote a story a while back now about, just kind of Drinkwitz's recruiting in St. Louis and what he was doing different, better. And that was basically what a number of coaches said was, he's been great at relating to these kids and getting them to buy into his vision. Now he's got to do right by them and, do right by us and impress us. So
right. And so, obviously, hey, very good thing, and not trying to throw the wet blanket on anything at all. I think it's a phenomenal get for the class. It continues the momentum that he has had. It gives him another weapon. It's all positive things. The one other point I want to bring up on this is there's always the debate about, do you take a guy that spurned you and went somewhere else? Do you take him when he wants to come back home? Mm-hmm. In year 5, that might be a different decision than it is today. But like Mookie Cooper didn't spurn Eli Drinkwitz.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big difference when someone like, in basketball, we talk about, what if Cameron Fletcher ends up transferring from Kentucky? I'm not saying he's going to, but, that talk's been out there because of his whole episode there. Like, it's a little different because he said no to Consul Martin versus a guy who said no to a different staff. And frankly, like, there is a time where you probably, don't want Missouri to look like a fallback option. But if there's a guy who can clearly address a position of need, like Mookie Cooper kind of can with just, speed and downfield playmaking ability, like you probably still take him at a certain point. Right. Your job's to win games. So
right now, if he trashes you on the way to Columbus, Ohio, maybe you don't. But also, right. I mean, I don't know if you watched Ohio State play last week, but like taking some guys that can't get on the field on that team, even at receiver, that might be okay.
Yeah, they've got some okay players there.
Yeah, I mean, every time I looked up, they had some receiver just sprinting past Clemson defensive backs while Justin Fields assured he should go number 2 in the NFL draft. So, that was all right. Aaron's asking, he says that Mookie said he was impressed with Mizzou finally emphasizing St. Louis. My question is, why wasn't it a priority under Odom? And this kind of leads back to what I was talking about. Back in year 1 of Barry Odom, a big deal was made. Like, he had a summit with St. Louis coaches, and everybody said really good things. And then Barry Odom didn't win games, and it went downhill. Now, I think this is different. This feels different than Odom year 1 did, but Gary Pinkel year 1, he landed Damian Nash, and it was huge. And then 4 years later, when Damian left on not very good terms, things weren't so great for Missouri and St. Louis. And then even toward the end of Pinkel, there were some people that said, hey, he's not putting in the effort like he used to. And Odom came in, and you heard, whether it was on the record or off, you heard people saying it's really nice to see a staff putting the effort into this city again. It's the honeymoon. It's the new coach. And look, hopefully for your sake, for his sake, for our sake, it all works and it's all great. And this is a new thing. But I think it is a little bit of the new boyfriend or girlfriend syndrome, a little bit, right? I think he is putting in a little more time and energy and effort maybe than the last staff did, but I also think there's the bright, shiny new toy factor.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure it's so much, making it more of a priority as it is just, being a little bit better at relating to kids. I mean, maybe maybe they are spending a little bit more time with these, kids and coaches in St. Louis or, contacting more coaches. But I think, the bottom line is, and what I heard the most when I wrote that story, I think it was back in the spring, was, he's just really good at connecting with these kids in a way that not a lot of other coaches are. And so, like really and truly, like, we've talked about this before on the site. Like, when you ask a kid, like, why did you pick a certain school? Like, a lot of times they just fall back on the same type of things. Like, oh, the family atmosphere and how much they said they wanted me. Like, in reality, it's always like, how quickly could I get on the field?
Can I go to the NFL?
And can I go to the NFL? So
100%. We've talked about this a little bit, but Dalton has been on a lot of our shows over the week, so I wanted to make sure we get it answered for him. Were there rumors about Walters potentially looking around in recent weeks? I only asked because of what Isaac Thompson said today. And not so much rumors as I think Isaac Thompson kind of knew what we all knew, right? Like, this might not. And whether he knew that because somebody at Missouri told him, Ryan might look around, or whether he knew it because he's using common sense and just looked at it, I can't say. But I hadn't heard anything about Ryan looking at other jobs, and I was not surprised that he was looking at other jobs, but I was surprised on Monday night, and I think you were too when I texted you about it, that Illinois was the one.
Yeah, and like you said, we hadn't, no one had told us he might look around, but we had brought it up on the site, saying like, common sense says, maybe he looks for a softer landing spot this offseason. And even also, at the time that Isaac Thompson was being recruited, it was talked about maybe he could be, move on for a head coaching job, especially for, before a guy who's in the class of 2022 gets to campus. So I think it's just, kind of, just a knowledge of how these things work. I mean, Isaac Thompson's dad played college football. Like he I think if there's anyone out there that kind of gets it, it's him.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And, again, give these kids some credit. Along with social media and everything being what it is, I think these kids have a little bit more understanding of college football and the fact that it's a business than maybe kids 5 or 10 years ago would have. I see one more football question here that we'll hit up before we move on to our closing subject. And Justin's wanting to know, do you see guys like Macklin or Abrams-Drain moving to cornerback? I know coming out of high school they were guys who could play both. And would Burdine move to safety? I don't know that they need to move guys because, they just signed a whole bunch of defensive backs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yes, it happened for a game this year with Chris Abrams-Drain moving back there, but that was kind of extreme circumstances. Position changes do happen, and occasionally they do work out, but they don't happen nearly as often or work out nearly as often as people want to think. And,
right.
People get creative and say well, why don't you just go ahead and move this person? They're like, odds are he's best suited to the position they recruited him at, especially when you're talking about another side of the ball. So could it happen? Maybe. But also, it's not like Missouri was insanely deep at receiver this year. I mean, they played, a walk-on at Booth Smith quite a few snaps. So I don't think that, having a few more guys there is the end of the world by any means.
And the reason Sean Robinson is a cool story is that it doesn't happen very much. I mean,
exactly.
If it happened all the time, then no big deal. David Dowell is saying that Rakestraw apparently didn't know about Walter, seemed to be a bit upset. Here was my favorite comment I saw today, and this time I really mean by favorite, I really mean favorite, was that we could just start a whole new message board dedicated to dissecting Ennis Rakestraw tweets.
Yes.
And I mean,
yes.
It is what it is. We follow him. We post the tweets. I'm not trying to make fun of the kid, but there's a lot there to look at sometimes. And I'm sure he probably was upset. He has a right to be upset. I get it.
Yeah, he can tweet what he wants. My advice would be more for the followers to just, wait for someone to tell you have cause to be alarmed, don't read too much into the Twitters.
100%. So, okay, real quick before we do move on, once again, 573Ts, there you see their logo. It's the 573 report. It's funny how that works, right? I mean, that's called branding. So go to 573ts.com. If you go through the link on our show page on our site, you can get a discount on your first purchase. Hey, you might have some Christmas money. I heard that people are getting money just direct deposited in their bank accounts lately. I haven't yet, but I heard some people are. So if you got that, maybe you can spend some of that money on a new T-shirt or a new sweatshirt, new hat, whatever. So, okay, so this kind of ties in football and basketball. Adam wants to know who has the most cryptic tweets, Pinson, Michael Porter Jr., or Rakestraw. I kind of feel like Tyler Beatty should be part of this discussion too.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Porter Jr.'s wasn't cryptic.
Nothing cryptic about it. It just flat out was out there.
But by far the most, stirred up the most stuff. I mean, he was on a different level of publicity, and he said whoever said whatever timeline flat lied or something like that. That's
by the way,
cryptic.
they did not lie. They were pretty much 100% right.
Yeah, so there was not cryptic there. It was just more drama, and that definitely caused the most commotion. Pinson, I feel like Pinson's more of an Instagram guy. I could be wrong. I feel like I haven't seen too many tweets from him. So I'm going to go ahead and say the winner is Rakestraw in that group. But yes, Pinson has been known to stir the pot a little bit on social media.
I would go with Pinson and Tyler Beatty as far as the most consistent. Speaking of Porter family tweets, have you woken up the last 5 days and noticed that Jonte Porter is constantly tweeting about giving away PS5s? What's happening?
Yeah, I'm wondering if he has accounts for that.
Is he getting hacked every day?
I don't know. Maybe he just has a bunch of PS5s and he's trying to give. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. The other one had an MIZ. One had an MIZ at the end of it. Maybe he just really likes people. Maybe he got a signing bonus. I don't know. Very cool for him. I would advise it. 20 years old, maybe save some of that money instead of giving away 3 PS5s every single day. But, whatever. Justin Ferguson says he keeps getting $9.95 taken out of his account. It's not for us, man. We're $9.95. So you were paying 4 cents too much for some website out there. So that's not us. Okay, so basketball happened, and we're going to try not to have this show go the same way that the game did, because if it does, the last 40 minutes of this are just going to be complete crap. It's just going to be awful. What the hell?
Computers will melt.
Seriously, what the hell? I don't know what
happened.
Gonzo didn't know what happened.
No. And it's a lot of times coaches get heat when after the game they just say I don't know what happened. But I didn't really expect any other answer, because if he knew what happened, he probably would have done something to stop it, I would think. Yeah, it was really and truly, I'm not sure I've ever seen a game, look that different, a team look that different from first half to second half, because it's not they were Mississippi State was just playing bad in the first half and Mizzou is kind of, loafed their way to 12 point. Mizzou looked really good. I thought it was their best half of the season in the first half. Their offense was crisp. They had 1 turnover. They had, I think, 9 assists on 15 field goals. They had 11 layups / dunks in the first half. Everything was clicking. They were getting out in transition, and then both ends of the floor, it just completely fell apart. And we'll get into the reasons for it.
Well, what about this theory? I haven't seen this brought up yet, but I just got a direct message from @DamianFish, Fishback, I believe actually, that said, I heard Mississippi State's players all took naps at halftime. So that obviously, I don't know if you noticed, Mitch, but they really looked tired in the first half.
Is that a fish fact?
Yeah, they were carrying their whoobies around the court with a pillow. They were so tired from those 10 extra minutes on Saturday. Oh my God. It was the worst.
Yeah, I don't like to bag on the announcers.
I don't either.
It's just become overly. But that was absurd. It really was. It was brought up 37 times.
And it was the first time it was brought up 3.5 minutes into the game. It was almost like Ben Howland had gone to them before the game and go, "Look, man, my guys are exhausted. We're probably gonna play like dung tonight. So when we start playing bad, I want you to tell everybody how tired we are." It was. I think he said it for the first time when it was 12-10.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if Howland mentioned that in their production meetings. And we are coming off a double overtime game. That is a coach thing to do.
But do you think it was the only thing he mentioned? Did he mention it 47 times?
No, he also mentioned that they have Batman and Robin and they don't know which one's Batman, because that was also said about 25 times.
And then in the second half, when Missouri started playing poorly, it had nothing to do with the road trip Saturday and another road trip Tuesday, and maybe they were tired. They had spent halftime reading their press clippings, so they were very, very. But in all seriousness, what was so weird about that to me was I can't really even identify where it started to go wrong. There was no oh yeah, this guy got a third foul, or there was this really huge emotional play from Mississippi State. It was Missouri was up 14, and then Mississippi State said, "Hey guys, this kind of sucks. Let's go." And Missouri just said, "Hey guys, let's do nothing right for the next 14 minutes of this game." Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Basically, Mississippi State, I think found a little bit of a sense of urgency. It's 2 guards who are both good players. They're good offensive players. They started making shots and they made tough shots. And, it seemed like for Missouri, the more and more it got to at first it was just oh, okay, bad possession or 2, whatever. But the more and more things should have gotten urgent, and they clearly needed a bucket. That almost caused a tailspin. All of a sudden, they're taking bad shots. They're turning
panicked.
The ball over.
I thought they panicked.
Yeah. I thought so too, and I kind of tried to ask Gonzo in the press conference. It was hard to find a way to word this exactly, but it's how worrisome is that's happening on this team? Because what we've always heard about this team is, they're so composed, they have grit, they have experience, they have toughness. That was this thing that wasn't supposed to happen. So I do think that is cause for concern, obviously.
No question. Real quick, we're talking about defensive coordinators. Football Scoop is reporting that Derek Mason expected to join Brian Harson's staff at Auburn. So
Oh,
there you go.
okay.
So I'm glad I got 7 solid hours of him on our hot board. But like I said, I didn't expect him to take this job anyway. So, and we're seeing your basketball questions and comments, and we'll get those up. And Aaron Johnson brings up a point about Drew Smith. Is he healthy? I don't know. But I put that question on the screen because, for 2 reasons. First of all, if there is a guy that, like, I understand Mitchell Smith is getting most of the heat. Javon Pickett gets some of it a lot of times. The 7th and 8th guys in the rotation are not what's holding this team back. What's holding this team back is that they're getting nothing from Drew and Mark Smith lately. I mean, like, less than nothing. They are getting negative impact from Drew and Mark Smith. And the play where I said, oh, this is over last night was at 55-52. Drew Smith committed one of the worst fouls I've ever seen. And some of the other worst fouls I've ever seen have also been committed by Drew Smith in the last few weeks. And this is a 5th-year senior, supposed to be the best guy on the team that they've said is as talented as any guard in the league. He can't do that in a 55-52 game, and then it's 58-52. And, I mean, at that point, it was over, and Mississippi State went on an 11-2 run right after that. But I really thought that foul on the three-point shot, I just said, oh, they're done. They got 7 minutes left, but they're not coming back.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think that is the biggest area where you look at where did we expect to get more. I mean, Drew Smith he was on one of the preseason 2nd or 3rd team All SEC. He was talked about. I mean, he's the coaching staff has raved about him since he got on campus. Mark Smith, starts this year off playing really well, and everyone's saying, that's the Mark Smith we know. He put in all this work, and he's not just a 3-point shooter. And now if you face guard him with a fairly athletic defender, he's pretty much ineffective. I mean, he did a little bit in the first half against Mississippi State, was absolutely invisible in the second. So yeah, I think I absolutely agree. That is the area where you're not getting nearly as much as you would expect. I do think to Aaron's point that Drew Smith might not be healthy. I've been wanting to ask for a little while. We haven't gotten to talk to him in a little while, but he's had that wrist wrapped up. But you did make the point on the message board today. If it's his wrist that's hurt, you would think it's the shooting that would be struggling, and he's been shooting okay.
Right.
The issue has been more of decision making.
It is not hindering his ability to slap at the ball and get whistled for a foul. I know that. A couple people, yeah. Justin and David, both bringing up Jeremiah Tillman in the 4th foul hurting. I thought the 3rd foul was kind of a garbage call. But the problem is it led directly to the 4th foul 12 seconds later, and that's what Jeremiah's always done. Like, if he gets one, he's almost – if he gets one especially that he doesn't think he deserves, he's almost instantly getting another one. That said, he had 16 and 6 last night. Like, you'll take that. He played – I thought he played well.
Yeah, like both him and Pinson came out of the game briefly for foul trouble, and like people have pointed to that as an issue. Like, some of the Mississippi State's runs came when they were out of the game, but like the fact that they scored, those were also Missouri's 2 best players, and like if them both being out of the game for like 3 to 4 minute stretches is going to absolutely doom your team against unranked team. That's more on the other guys than it is on them for picking up a foul, because Jeremiah Tillman's never playing 40 minutes in a game. It's just not going to happen. And so,
Yeah. So Tillman was, I thought, good. Pinson was decent. Everybody else was awful. And Cam Cameron, I'm struggling to find positives about Drew Buggs' game other than he can completely dribble the ball up the court. I don't know. I mean, they praise him a lot, and it's 4-on-5 offensively when he's out there at this point in time. I don't see big assist numbers. I don't see them. I mean, they had 21 turnovers 2 games in a row. If he solved those issues, he would be on the court more. I'm not sure right now.
Yeah, I mean, like the bottom line is, and I will say, I was pointed this out even after the Oregon game. So back when everyone was feeling really good about Missouri basketball, like they needed to bring in someone this offseason who could score, who could get you a bucket when things aren't going great and you need a bucket. And that was extremely evident last night. And that's never been Drew Buggs' game. I don't want to say they settled on him, but he was not plan A this offseason in the transfer market. And he may be a really good kid and a good leader and a good passer. That's not really what this team needed. They had a lot of guys like that. They needed someone who could score, and that's just what's missing. missing, and it's what has been missing for 2 years now.
Yeah, no question. So this is what it really all comes down to. Cam is saying, how confident are you that a 64-60 – oh, I thought this was asking about Missouri. But he's asking, how confident are you that a normal NCAA tournament field will happen this year? I think it will. But more important than that to me is where I was going to take it is, how confident are you today that Missouri is in it at the end of the year? I mean, not like if it started today.
Yeah. It's hard because we don't know. I mean, this is such a weird season, right? Like, it's hard for me to keep track of, how good Missouri's resume actually is compared to other teams, and what criteria the selection committee is even going to use for this thing. Yeah. I feel pretty good. I'm going to give Missouri right now like a 75% chance to be in the tournament, just because I think honestly they should be able to go something like 500 in the SEC and get in, because their non-conference resume is really strong. I mean, I think the RPI isn't used anymore, but before the loss to Mississippi State, they were number 1 in the RPI, which is very largely based on strength of schedule. So, that still is noteworthy. They were 10th in the first net ranking. So I feel pretty good about them getting in. But also, like, if they sneak in as a 10 seed or a 9 seed or something like that and lose in the first round, that's probably not enough to satisfy a lot of people, especially given what looks like is on the horizon.
Yeah, that's not going to make anybody really feel much better. And so, real quick, we got a few minutes left. I'm checking SEC scores. Tennessee was behind earlier tonight. I don't know what they ended up doing. Tennessee came back to beat Arkansas at home, 79-74. But Arkansas was shooting lights out. Like, Tennessee played 3 really bad halves after they left here. LSU, which comes to Columbia on Saturday, beat Georgia in overtime, which is interesting. They're 2-1 in the league. That kind of turns into – so we talked on the pregame show last night about how, 2-0 wasn't – I thought 2-0 this week was a must if you wanted to be serious about winning the league. 0-2 is kind of a must. I don't want to call Saturday a must win, but – if you drop both these games this week, you're feeling like you're in a whole different place.
Yeah, it's too early to call things a must win, but it is important. I mean, like, Missouri, each of the last 2 years has gotten off to such a bad start in SEC play and had to just kind of claw their way back to semi-relevance. Like, you don't want that again this year, especially after all the momentum you had in the non-conference. I think it would be big to just kind of, bounce back. I mean, like, that second half, this shouldn't be the case for an experienced team, but that could be the type of thing that, like, that sticks with the team for a little while, because it was bad. It wasn't just your average loss, as we discussed. It was, a total collapse. So I think it would be good for morale if they can bounce back and put it together. And LSU, I think, is a better matchup for Missouri. Now, they can score. Missouri's going to have to be able to score with them, but they're not nearly as good on defense and good at protecting the rim, which are the things that Missouri has really struggled against.
Yeah. David is saying it's hard to believe they aren't in the tournament, but it's also hard to believe they get past game 1 unless they figure out how to score from somewhere other than the free throw line. But, I brought this up, and I saw you brought it up on the message board. I brought it up on the post-game show last night. So to win the NCAA tournament, you have to win 6 straight games, right? At the beginning of this season, Missouri started against Oral Roberts and won game 1. That's like a 4-13 game, right? They won that. The next game, I think, was Oregon, right? That's like a 4-5 game. They won that. It wasn't in order, but a couple games later, they beat Illinois. That's like a 1-4 game in the Sweet 16. They beat. Yeah. I mean, they've actually done. They've kind of already paved the path to the Final Four, and I'm not making the argument this is a Final Four team. I'm just making the argument let's not end the season after last night. So do you agree? Can we not end the season? Mitchell, I have frozen Mitchell on my screen with that.
Funny, that's that. I will go ahead and say it. We do not have to bury this team and fire Conso. And it's funny, like, we were texting about this. Like, all of a sudden we've become Conso white knights in some people's minds just because we're saying maybe we don't have to fire him yet when his team's 7-2 and ranked 13th and lost on the road. Like, right. This team still has everything in front of it. There are reasons to be worried and have doubts based off what we saw last night. But there's also, I mean, reason for optimism. Like, the post I was responding to, someone said, like, there's just no way this team can do better than like win one, lose one in a given week. It's like, well, why not? It already did.
Right.
So, it's not. There's a lot of basketball left to play, certainly.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up kind of with this one. Is the problem with shooting due to poor evaluation from coaches or not emphasized enough in practice? I mean, look, these guys have shot 1 million shots in their life. It's not that they don't practice shooting. I'm sure they practice shooting, and even if they don't, like, they shouldn't have to. I mean, they've done that their whole lives. I think they've kind of signed a bunch of guys that can't really shoot at this level. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think just the talent level isn't quite there. Like, and I think some of them are fine shooters, but when they're facing an athletic defender that makes it harder, then all of a sudden it's harder to make shots. I mean, that's what we see with Mark Smith, and there are guys on Missouri's team who just can't make them when they're alone, as we've seen. But like, guys like Mark Smith, like, he's a fine shooter in some circumstances, but if you face guard him and you have someone who's taller than him or longer than him or more athletic than him, then it becomes a lot harder to make shots, and that's where your own skill, and athleticism comes in. I actually was texting with someone who used to play on Missouri's team in the very recent past, and we were talking about the shooting, and I was like, "What's up with that?" Like, and he basically said, "Dude, like, these guys all make shots in practice. Like, they get shots up. They just like, the lights come on sometimes, and they just can't make them." Like, he's like, "It's not a new thing." I was like, I mean, wow. Like, why is that? He's like, I don't know. I think it's just kind of a confidence deal.
Yeah,
so
I can confirm it's not a new thing. It's been going on for a minute. So Missouri at LSU on Saturday. I'm sure things will happen between now and then. Many things have happened in the last couple days, so I'm sure other things will happen in the next couple days. So, hey, before you guys log off, 2 things. Check out 573tees.com. Go there, buy yourself a shirt, or buy somebody else's shirt even. That's a nice thing to do. Be nice, maybe. But also be nice to us. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell people about the show. We did basketball shows last night. We'll do basketball shows on Saturday. Had this show every Wednesday, and who knows, we might even expand our vast YouTube empire down the road. We'll see how it goes. So, all right, Mitch, have a good night, man. Appreciate it, and we'll catch up.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back on Saturday. We'll be back here next week at 7:30. But we are signing off for now. Have a good one.